The venom of betrayal, once injected, spreads relentlessly, consuming not just the victim but often, inadvertently, the one who delivers the poison. This is the tale of a man who, in the ashes of his shattered life, meticulously forged a path not merely to survival, but to an unprecedented victory, proving that some battles are won not with fury, but with chilling, strategic precision. You tried to ruin my business and me, Serena, but in your destructive ambition, you only succeeded in dismantling yourself. So, who truly stands as the vanquished now? The realization hit Arthur Sterling with the force of a physical blow. The precise moment a disarmingly familiar laugh echoed through his vehicle's sound system. It was a laugh he hadn't heard reverberate in their shared bedroom in 6 long months, now unmistakably directed at the playful, intimate voice of another man, who casually uttered, "Meet me at the usual place, beautiful." The incriminating audio clip, a mere 12 seconds in duration, felt like an eternity. Those fleeting moments ruthlessly fractured 22 years of what he had believed to be a steadfast marriage, demolished 17 years dedicated to meticulously building his successful logistics software company, Sterling Solutions, and utterly shattered every single assumption he had ever harbored about the woman who had lain beside him in their bed night after night. Arthur sat in the quiet solitude of his home office, his gaze fixed on the jagged waveform displayed starkly on his computer screen. The sophisticated voice recognition software he had discreetly installed in their shared luxury odyssey had captured everything. Serena's hushed phone calls, her casual conversations with passengers, even her unrestrained singing along to the radio. He had initiated this covert surveillance merely 3 weeks prior, prompted by a growing unease as she began to password-protect devices that had, for years, remained as open books within their domestic sphere. The digital timestamp indicated the recording was captured in the late afternoon, just the day before, a Tuesday. While he had been consumed with the intricate task of debugging server issues and meticulously preparing for a crucial client presentation that could define the next quarter for his company, his wife had been nonchalantly charting the course for her next illicit rendezvous. A gentle rap at the door broke his somber reverie. "Dad, dinner's ready." Ethan's voice, brimming with youthful energy, preceded his 17-year-old frame as it gracefully filled the office doorway. Behind him, chess trophies gleamed on the shelves, testament to a methodical, strategic mind Arthur had diligently nurtured since Ethan was a boy of 8. "Be right there, son," Arthur replied, his voice a practiced calm, as he closed the laptop with a deliberate, almost ritualistic precision, securing the raw evidence of his crumbling world. The dining room, once a space of familial comfort and warmth, felt subtly alien now, permeated by an unspoken tension. Serena sat across from him, her movements almost mechanical as she cut her salmon, a dish once shared with easy conversation. Her demanding role as an escrow officer demanded meticulous attention to detail, a trait Arthur had admired, but lately, her focus had fragmented, even during what should have been routine family conversations. "How was your day, my dear?" Arthur inquired, the question now laden with layers of new, painful meaning. "Busy, darling. Had 3 closings, and a particularly vexing problem arose with the Meadowbrook estate." Serena's voice remained professionally composed, adopting the same controlled tone she reserved for navigating interactions with difficult clients. Alastair Thorne's latest development is encountering some rather complex title issues. Alastair Thorne, Arthur repeated inwardly, the name now etched into his memory for future investigation. "The regional chess tournament is next Friday," Ethan interjected, skillfully changing the subject with the characteristic enthusiasm of youth. Coach thinks I have a real shot at making it to the state qualifiers this year. That's truly wonderful. Son, a fantastic opportunity. Arthur responded automatically. His conscious mind, however, was preoccupied, meticulously analyzing the fleeting micro-expressions that flitted across his wife's face. He noted, with a chilling detachment, how she checked her phone twice, almost compulsively, during Ethan's earnest explanation of his intricate opening strategy. After dinner, Arthur retreated once more to the sanctuary of his home office, feigning exhaustion, while Serena declared her need to review pressing contracts. Through the thin, seemingly inadequate wall separating their spaces, he distinctly overheard her making a hushed phone call. "I can't talk long, darling." No, he doesn't suspect a thing, not yet. Friday works perfectly, but do try to make it earlier, my love. Arthur silently opened his laptop, its screen casting a cool glow on his determined face, and began typing. His complex logistics software had not merely made him wealthy. It had been built on the principle of precisely tracking packages across vast, intricate supply chains, unraveling complexities with data. Tracking one unfaithful wife, he mused, would, in comparison, prove elementary. The following morning, Serena departed for her work with an almost unnerving buoyancy, a lightness Arthur hadn't witnessed in her demeanor for many months. She even brushed a fleeting kiss against his cheek, a rare gesture that now felt like a cruel mockery, and hummed a cheerful tune as she gathered her belongings. "I might be quite late tonight, my dear," she announced, her eyes avoiding his. "There's a particularly complex closing involved with the Emerald Vista project." Arthur merely nodded, his expression carefully neutral, and watched her sleek Odyssey pull away from the driveway. Only then, with the vehicle out of sight, did he open his sophisticated monitoring software, his true work for the day beginning. By midday, with focused dedication, he had successfully isolated the distinct male voice from the myriad of car recordings. A rapid, targeted search of Serena's extensive contact list revealed an entry for Alastair Thorne, innocuously categorized as a professional contact. However, a deeper dive into the call logs exposed a stark contradiction. Conversations extending for 20 to 40 minutes at a time. Genuine real estate discussions, Arthur knew, rarely necessitated such protracted exchanges. He then broadened his inquiry, researching Alastair's company, Thorne Ventures. It appeared to be a mid-sized operation, with several residential projects scattered across the thriving landscape of Evergreen City. A swift, incisive dive into public records quickly unearthed a civil lawsuit filed by a disgruntled subcontractor, alleging substantial unpaid wages. Furthermore, the company's financial filings, upon closer scrutiny, revealed a pattern of rather creative accounting practices that undeniably bordered on the highly questionable, raising immediate red flags. In the early afternoon, Arthur's phone vibrated with a terse text message from Serena, running considerably behind schedule. "Don't wait up, darling." Simultaneously, the GPS tracker embedded in her phone pinpointed her location at the Grand Pinnacle Hotel in Willow Creek, a full 60 miles from any property or business she should legitimately be handling. Arthur, his resolve hardening, drove there himself, meticulously parking his vehicle in a vantage point from which he could discreetly observe the hotel entrance. In the late afternoon, exactly as anticipated, Serena emerged, accompanied by a tall, impeccably dressed man in an expensive, tailored suit. They exchanged a brief, intimate kiss in the hotel parking lot before retreating to their separate cars. Alastair Thorne, a man whose features Arthur now recognized with chilling clarity, perfectly matched his LinkedIn profile photo. Arthur then shadowed Alastair to a sprawling construction site, noting every detail: the distinct license plate of his vehicle, the glint of his exorbitant watch, the polished sheen of his designer shoes. This was unequivocally not some desperate, fleeting affair born of loneliness or impulsive passion. This was a calculated, deeply entrenched, ongoing, and, most disturbingly, expensive clandestine relationship. That same evening, Serena arrived home well into the late hours, clutching a bag of takeout Asian cuisine, and launched into an elaborate, almost theatrical narrative about unforeseen document reviews that had run considerably late. "How was your day, dear?" she inquired, mirroring the very question Arthur had posed to her the previous night, her voice an unsettling echo of his own carefully measured query. "Productive, Serena," Arthur replied, a subtle, almost imperceptible emphasis on the word. "I've actually been contemplating taking a rather significant business trip next week. A potentially major client in Riverbend has expressed keen interest in discussing a substantial software implementation." "Oh, that sounds tremendously promising, Arthur," Serena exclaimed, her relief almost palpably visible, a flicker of genuine excitement in her eyes. "I could certainly use some quiet time to catch up on my own extensive workload." Arthur permitted himself a small, knowing smile. "Indeed, my dear, I thought you might." Over the course of the subsequent 3 days, Arthur meticulously prepared, employing the identical, methodical approach he had so successfully utilized in building his renowned software company. His research into Alastair's background, precarious financial situation, and questionable business practices was exhaustive, leaving no stone unturned. He discreetly installed diminutive, high-definition cameras in strategic, inconspicuous locations throughout their home, ensuring comprehensive coverage. Furthermore, he opened a completely new, untraceable bank account, transferring a substantial sum of funds, more than sufficient to sustain an extended, clandestine operation. Most critically, he established contact with a highly recommended private investigator, a specialist renowned for expertise in cases of corporate malfeasance and financial impropriety. The investigator's preliminary report on Alastair's company, Thorn Ventures, immediately red-flagged several alarming irregularities: suspiciously inflated invoices, conspicuously missing receipts for large expenditures, and a trail of payments leading to phantom shell companies that appeared to exist only on paper. Yet, the truly decisive breakthrough, the pivot point in Arthur's carefully constructed strategy, originated from an utterly unexpected source. Arthur's phone rang early one crisp morning, the caller ID displaying an unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Is this Arthur Sterling?" The woman's voice, though controlled and deliberate, betrayed an underlying tension that piqued his interest. "Yes, this is he," Arthur confirmed, his tone measured. "This is Clara Thorne," she stated, a new urgency in her voice. "I believe we need to have a serious discussion." They arranged to meet at a quaint, unassuming coffee shop nestled in Havenwood, a location chosen for its equidistant convenience between their respective homes. Clara Thorne, Arthur observed, was physically smaller than he had anticipated, yet her presence exuded a formidable intensity, characterized by sharp, intelligent eyes and silvering hair meticulously pulled back into a severe, no-nonsense bun. She sat directly across from him, placing a worn manila folder onto the polished tabletop. "Your wife, Serena, isn't Alastair's first affair, Mr. Sterling," she stated flatly, bypassing all polite preamble. "She is, in fact, the third one I am aware of in just the last 2 years alone." Arthur maintained a stoic, neutral expression, betraying no outward sign of the raw emotions churning within him. "And why, may I ask, are you disclosing this information to me now, Miss Thorne?" he inquired, his voice calm. Because I am utterly exhausted by the relentless humiliation, and more importantly, because Alistair has become egregiously sloppy with money that emphatically does not belong to him. Clara opened the folder, revealing a damning collection of impeccably organized bank statements, meticulously printed email exchanges, and discreetly captured photographs. He has been systematically skimming vast sums from various project accounts, using these illicit gains to finance his extravagant extracurricular activities, lavish hotel stays, ostentatious jewelry, exorbitantly expensive dinners, and countless other indulgences. And what, precisely, do you seek from me in this endeavor? Arthur pressed, his analytical mind already sifting through the implications. Proof, Mr. Sterling. Proof that will stand unassailable in divorce court. Evidence that definitively demonstrates Alistair's egregious pattern of stealing from his own company, his own family. Clara's smile, thin and sharp, held a predatory edge. I have diligently documented everything for months, accumulating a formidable dossier. But I urgently require someone with your unparalleled technical skills to access and corroborate his digital records. My access is limited. Arthur carefully scrutinized the meticulously assembled documents. Alistair's personal spending had indeed surged dramatically over the past year, marked by suspiciously large cash withdrawals and recurring payments to various luxury retailers, a clear pattern of illicit enrichment. What precisely leads you to believe I possess such specialized technical skills? Arthur probed, testing her knowledge. I conducted thorough research on you, Mr. Sterling, after I observed you discreetly following Alistair yesterday. Sterling Solutions, founded 12 years ago, an estimated market value of $15 million. One does not construct such a formidable enterprise by remaining naive about the intricacies of data systems and digital forensics. Arthur slowly closed the folder, the weight of the implications settling heavily upon him. What is your desired timeline for action, Miss Thorne? Alistair is scheduled to present to a consortium of potential investors next Friday, hoping to secure substantial funding for a new, ambitious development project. If certain, shall we say, inconvenient information were to become public during that pivotal presentation, it would prove utterly devastating to his career, his reputation, and his financial standing. And my wife, Serena? Arthur inquired, the words tasting bitter. From what I have diligently gathered, she has been, perhaps inadvertently, aiding Alistair in illicitly moving money through various escrow accounts. Small amounts, yes, but certainly enough to result in the permanent revocation of her professional license, and potentially lead to far more severe consequences should anyone choose to investigate closely. A cold, heavy dread settled deep in Arthur's chest. Serena wasn't merely engaging in a tawdry affair. She was actively, knowingly breaking laws that could ultimately lead to her imprisonment, severing her from their life and their son. I need some time to thoroughly consider this proposition, he stated, his voice barely a whisper. Do not deliberate for too long, Mr. Sterling. Alistair is growing increasingly suspicious about your recent surveillance activities. He has already mentioned the possibility of hiring private security, perhaps even engaging a counter-surveillance expert. Arthur drove home in a shroud of oppressive silence, his mind relentlessly processing the profound implications of Clara's revelations. His wife had not merely shattered the sacred vows of their marriage. She had, with chilling indifference, compromised her entire professional integrity for a man who flagrantly treated romantic affairs as mere business ventures, disposable and interchangeable. That evening, Serena announced another late meeting, a now familiar refrain. This Emerald Vista project, darling, is proving far more intricate and demanding than originally anticipated, she stated, deliberately avoiding his gaze, her voice carefully modulated. I might even need to work through the entire weekend, I'm afraid. Of course, my dear, Arthur replied, his voice devoid of any real emotion. Ethan and I can manage perfectly well here at home. After Serena's departure, Arthur joined his son in the living room. Ethan was deeply engrossed in a complex chess problem from a thick instructional book, his concentration absolute, a mirror of Arthur's own focused intellect. "Dad, is everything truly okay?" Ethan asked, without lifting his gaze from the chessboard, his voice tinged with a subtle concern. "You've been different lately. Something seems off." Arthur paused, weighing his options. He considered concocting a convenient lie, but then dismissed the thought. Ethan deserved the unvarnished truth, or at least a carefully distilled version of it. His son was 17, on the cusp of adulthood, possessing an astute intelligence that missed very little. "There are some rather complicated problems at work, Ethan." Arthur began cautiously, choosing his words with precision. "Nothing, however, that you need to concern yourself unduly with." Ethan thoughtfully moved a chess piece, then finally looked up, his keen eyes meeting Arthur's. "Problems that you, Dad, can definitively solve?" "Yes, son, absolutely. Just taking a little longer than usual to untangle, that's all." Ethan nodded, accepting his father's vague assurance, and returned to his chess book. Sometimes, he mused, a faint smile playing on his lips, the best moves look entirely wrong at first glance. Later, Arthur retreated to the solitude of his office and immediately called Clara Thorne. "I'm in," he announced the moment she answered, his voice firm with renewed purpose. "But we execute this operation with absolute precision, carefully, legally, and completely, leaving no loose ends, no room for error." "Agreed," Clara responded, her voice betraying a hint of relief. "Can you meet me tomorrow night? I have something rather significant I need to show you in person." The following evening, Arthur informed Serena that he had a critical dinner meeting with a prospective client, a convenient alibi. She barely glanced up from her laptop, too engrossed in her own clandestine plans, as he left the house. Clara's residence was a modest, unassuming ranch-style home, situated in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. She led Arthur directly to a home office that, to his discerning eye, rivaled his own in its meticulous organization and advanced technological setup. Alastair, in his arrogance, truly believes I am nothing more than a harmless housewife who utterly fails to comprehend the intricacies of business or finance, she remarked, her lips curving into a wry smile as she powered up 3 large, high-resolution monitors. He has, for months now, negligently left his work laptop open and accessible around me, confident in my supposed ignorance. The screens flickered to life, immediately filling with an overwhelming deluge of meticulously copied financial documents, incriminating email records, and detailed file directories extracted directly from Alastair's company servers. Clara, it was evident, had been systematically, patiently, and relentlessly copying everything of value. "Here, Arthur, is the absolute heart of what I have painstakingly uncovered," she declared, opening a complex spreadsheet program. "Alastair has been brazenly inflating material costs on every project and systematically pocketing the considerable difference. Furthermore, he has been fraudulently billing clients for substantial work that was, in fact, never even completed or initiated." Arthur meticulously studied the alarming figures scrolling across the screen. "This, Clara," he stated quietly, his voice grim, "is not merely fraud. This is outright embezzlement. We're talking major felony territory here, with potentially devastating consequences. It gets even better, Arthur. Much, much better. Now, take a look at these email exchanges, particularly the ones involving your wife, Serena. The emails, though superficially professional in their phrasing, clearly revealed a deeply coordinated, illicit scheme. Serena, in her capacity as an escrow officer, had been intentionally holding legitimate funds in escrow account for periods far longer than legally necessary, deliberately allowing Alastair to exploit this float for his personal, extravagant expenses before the money eventually, and belatedly, moved to its final, intended destinations. "She's actively committing wire fraud," Arthur murmured, the gravity of the revelation sinking in, among a litany of other serious financial crimes. But wait, Arthur. Here's what I consider to be the real prize, the irrefutable nail in his coffin. Clara opened yet another folder, revealing a series of encrypted transactions. Alastair's been systematically using company funds to surreptitiously purchase large quantities of cryptocurrency, a staggering $40,000 worth over the past 6 months alone. For what conceivable purpose? Arthur asked, his mind racing, attempting to connect the disparate threads. According to his meticulously tracked browser history, Clara explained, her voice chillingly calm, he's making preparations to flee the country entirely. There are extensive flight searches to various non-extradition countries, along with detailed research on overseas property purchases and discreet offshore banking options. He's planning a grand escape. Arthur felt the final, crucial pieces of the puzzle click into place with a sickening clarity. He's going to utterly bankrupt the company, abscond with the remaining funds, and disappear without a trace. And he's taking your wife with him, isn't he? Based on some of their more recent, intimate conversations, Clara confirmed, then played a short audio file retrieved from Alastair's phone. His voice, smug and confident, was unmistakable. "Once the investor presentation is successfully concluded, darling, and the money is securely transferred, we can be anywhere on this planet we desire. Serena, my love, is handling all the intricate details of the offshore account setup." Arthur listened, his features unmoving, as his wife's voice, tinged with a nervous tremor, responded, "I've truly never done anything like this before, Alastair. What if we get caught? What if something goes wrong?" Alastair's arrogant chuckle filled the silent office. "We won't, my dear. Trust me. By the time anyone, especially those clueless investors, manages to figure out the full extent of our ingenious scheme, we'll already be safely ensconced in a country that couldn't care less about petty American business disputes or legal squabbles." The recording abruptly ceased, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Arthur stared at the computer screen, absorbing the full, horrifying scope of the calculated betrayal. Serena wasn't merely engaging in an illicit affair. She was an active, willing participant in a meticulously orchestrated plot to steal a colossal sum of money and shamelessly flee the country, abandoning her entire life, her family, her son. When, precisely, is this pivotal investor presentation scheduled? Arthur finally asked, his voice low and strained. "Next Friday," Clara confirmed. Alastair is confidently expecting to raise a cool $2 million for his new, ostensibly legitimate residential development project. And yes, Arthur, my intention is to expose everything, every single one of his fraudulent dealings during that very presentation. I want to utterly destroy him, Arthur, completely. His career, his reputation, his freedom, everything he holds dear. I want him to lose it all, just as he has stolen from me for years." Clara's voice, though outwardly calm, vibrated with the accumulated rage of 22 years of betrayal and quiet humiliation. Alastair, in his boundless arrogance, genuinely believes he is smarter than everyone else, untouchable. It's time, Arthur, to unequivocally prove him catastrophically wrong. Arthur nodded slowly, a grim determination settling over him. I will require comprehensive access to his systems well before Friday, Clara, preferably as soon as possible, to ensure a thorough and meticulous infiltration. That has already been meticulously arranged, Clara revealed, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Alistair is scheduled to meet with a fake investor this coming Monday afternoon. One of my most trusted friends, a highly respected figure in commercial real estate, has graciously set up the appointment for us. Alistair will be conveniently out of his office for a solid 3 hours. His so-called security? Utterly basic, bordering on laughable. Alistair is arrogant enough to genuinely believe his simplistic password schemes are absolutely unbreakable. They spent 2 more intensive hours meticulously planning every single detail of the impending operation. Arthur assumed full responsibility for the technical infiltration and digital assault, while Clara meticulously managed the intricate logistics of the public presentation ambush. By the time Arthur finally departed from her house, the late night sky casting long shadows, they had forged a comprehensive, watertight strategy for the systematic destruction of both Alistair Thorne's and Serena Sterling's lives. Arthur drove home through the quiet, deserted suburban streets, his mind now a whirlwind of contingencies, variables, and alternative scenarios. In chess, Ethan had taught him that the true key to achieving victory lay in thinking not just 1 or 2 moves ahead, but several, anticipating every possible counter. Arthur was now thinking 10 moves ahead, playing out every potential outcome in his mind. Serena was already deeply asleep when he finally arrived home, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in her carefully constructed reality. She had, as usual, left a neatly folded note claiming her client meeting had concluded successfully and that she had, with purported efficiency, closed the Meadowbrook estate deal. Arthur crumpled the note into a tight ball, the flimsy paper a metaphor for her lies, knowing with absolute certainty that she had spent the entire evening in a hotel room with Alistair, idly planning their fantastical escape to some idyllic tropical paradise. Saturday morning, however, brought an unexpected and profoundly unwelcome complication to his meticulously laid plans. Arthur was diligently reviewing Alistair's complex company structure on his laptop, identifying potential vulnerabilities, when Ethan suddenly appeared in the office doorway. "Dad, there's something really weird going on," Ethan stated, his voice hushed, his brow furrowed with concern. "What precisely do you mean, son?" Arthur asked, his internal alarm bells ringing softly. Ethan held up his tablet, its screen illuminating his young, serious face. "Mom left her email account open on the tablet earlier, and I was just trying to find that restaurant reservation confirmation for Grandma's birthday dinner. But then, just look at this, Dad." The tablet displayed a bewildering email thread between Serena and someone cryptically identified only as AD, discussing what appear to be highly sensitive travel documents and large, suspicious bank transfers. The messages, though cleverly coded with innocuous-sounding phrases, clearly referenced illicit financial activities. She's talking about obtaining fake identification and moving massive amounts of money to the Coral Atolls. Ethan explained, his voice trembling slightly, his youthful face starkly serious, robbed of its usual innocence. "This isn't just about real estate deals anymore, is it, Dad? This is something far more sinister." Arthur slowly, deliberately closed his laptop, the click echoing loudly in the sudden silence of the room. Ethan, he realized, deserved the whole truth, unvarnished and complete. "Your mother," Ethan, Arthur began, choosing his words with agonizing care, is involved in an affair. And, regrettably, she is also actively assisting her friend in stealing a significant amount of money from his company. Ethan sank heavily into the chair positioned across from Arthur's desk, the reality of his father's words hitting him with physical force. "For how long has this been going on, Dad?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The affair, at least 6 months, perhaps longer. The financial crimes are more recent, but equally serious. And you know all of this, how?" Arthur then calmly, meticulously, recounted the entire elaborate narrative, the discreet surveillance, the incriminating recordings, and his unexpected, yet crucial, alliance with Clara Thorne. Ethan listened without a single interruption, his expression gradually hardening, growing colder, with each new, devastating revelation. "She's planning to leave us," Ethan finally stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, when Arthur finished his somber account. "Leave the country entirely, isn't she?" "Yes, son. That is precisely their plan." Ethan stared blankly at the tablet screen, the harsh glow reflecting in his unseeing eyes. "So, what are we going to do about it, Dad?" "We're going to stop them, Ethan. Completely. Absolutely." On Monday afternoon, Arthur drove with determined precision to Alastair's corporate office building, simultaneously confirming via text with Clara that the fake investor meeting was now successfully underway. Thorne Ventures occupied the entire third floor of a sleek, modern glass office building nestled within the bustling financial district of South Evergreen City. Arthur gained entry effortlessly through the secure parking garage, utilizing a key card Clara had provided, which granted him unimpeded access to the building's interior. Alastair's corner office, bathed in the muted afternoon light, was, as expected, unlocked, his powerful laptop still connected to the corporate network, a testament to his overconfidence. Arthur swiftly plugged in a small, specialized USB device designed to copy the entire contents of the hard drive while concurrently installing advanced monitoring software, a digital backdoor. The copying process, though comprehensive, would require approximately 90 minutes, a time frame well within Alastair's anticipated meeting duration. While the laptop's hard drive was being methodically duplicated, Arthur utilized his time efficiently, photographing numerous incriminating financial documents, printed email exchanges, and even a large wall calendar that meticulously detailed Alastair's future travel schedule. Several specific dates were conspicuously marked with a cryptic annotation M-Trip, unequivocally referencing clandestine meetings with Serena. Just then, Arthur's phone vibrated with a text message from Clara. "Meeting running long. You have extra time, Arthur." Arthur seized the unexpected bonus time, gaining deeper access to Alastair's primary email server, and proceeded to copy a staggering 2 years' worth of correspondence. The cumulative evidence of rampant embezzlement was, by now, overwhelmingly conclusive. Alastair, it was shockingly clear, had been systematically stealing from his own company almost since its very inception, a long-standing pattern of criminal deceit. By late afternoon, Arthur was back in the sanctuary of his car, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over him, holding a complete, meticulously organized digital copy of Alastair's entire business operations. Every illicit bank account, every fraudulent invoice, every single incriminating email was now securely stored on multiple encrypted drives, awaiting its strategic deployment. That evening, Serena announced, yet again, her need to work late. "It's going to be a rather big week ahead, darling," she said, gathering her purse and laptop with an air of professional importance. "Several significant closings that unfortunately necessitate evening meetings." Arthur merely nodded sympathetically, his eyes betraying nothing. "Don't work too hard, my dear. We'll manage here." After Serena's departure, Arthur and Ethan settled into the living room, their faces illuminated by the glow of Arthur's laptop as they meticulously reviewed the newly copied files. "Look at this, Dad," Ethan exclaimed, his finger tracing an email from just 3 days prior. Mom's explicitly asking Alastair about international wire transfer limits. And here, Arthur added, highlighting a different, equally damning message on the screen, Alastair is explicitly telling her to resign from her job immediately after Friday's investor meeting. The timing is impeccable. Ethan's jaw tightened, his youthful innocence now completely eroded by the harsh realities before him. They really were planning to disappear, weren't they, Dad? Just vanish. Not anymore, son, Arthur stated, his voice firm, resolute. They aren't going anywhere they don't deserve to be. Tuesday morning ushered in yet another unsettling surprise. Arthur's phone, usually quiet at such an early hour, rang insistently. It was Clara's number. "Arthur, we have a significant problem," she stated without preamble, her voice tight with suppressed urgency. "Someone broke into my house last night." Arthur's pulse quickened, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "Alastair?" he immediately queried. No, surprisingly. Alastair was at a city planning meeting until late evening, almost 10 o'clock. I personally confirmed his alibi. This was definitively someone else entirely. Arthur's mind raced, piecing together the possibilities. What, if anything, did they take? "Nothing overtly obvious," Clara reported, "but someone meticulously went through my home office. It was a thoroughly professional job, disturbingly precise." "Serena," Arthur stated, the fragments of information clicking into place with a chilling certainty. "She must have harbored suspicions that you were investigating Alastair and acted on them. But how could she possibly have known about me?" Clara asked, baffled. Arthur swiftly processed the implications. Alastair likely mentioned his wife, Serena, becoming suspicious of his activities. Serena, as you know, is highly skilled at research. It's an integral part of her profession. She could have easily identified you, Clara, and decided to conduct her own reconnaissance to determine what you knew or what you were gathering. So, our meticulously constructed cover is compromised, then? Clara questioned, a note of defeat in her voice. "Not necessarily, Clara. Not if we consider their next actions. If they truly knew the full extent of our plan, especially the ambush at Friday's presentation, they would undoubtedly be taking drastic measures to prevent it, not proceeding as scheduled. This was merely reconnaissance, an information-gathering expedition, not a preventative strike." Clara remained silent for a moment, clearly weighing his words. "What then do we do now, Arthur?" "We accelerate our timeline. Clara, can you manage to move the presentation ambush forward to Wednesday instead of Friday?" "I'll immediately begin making the necessary calls," she confirmed, renewed determination in her voice. Wednesday morning, Arthur calmly informed Serena that he needed to depart for his Riverbend business trip, a calculated deception. "My client, dear, unexpectedly wants to meet earlier than anticipated," he explained casually, meticulously packing a suitcase with clothes he wouldn't actually need for the journey. "I could potentially be gone through the entire weekend, depending on how the negotiations unfold." Serena's visible relief was almost comical, a fleeting, unguarded expression of joy. "Oh, Arthur, drive safely, darling. I'll dutifully hold down the fort here at home, don't you worry." Instead of embarking on the planned journey to Riverbend, Arthur discreetly checked into a modest, unassuming hotel room located just 15 minutes from Alastair's corporate office. He spent the entire day in concentrated solitude, meticulously finalizing the intricate details of his digital assault, cross-referencing every file, every line of code. Meanwhile, Clara, operating remotely, confirmed that Alistair's investor presentation had indeed been successfully moved forward to Thursday afternoon. "Perfect, Clara," Arthur declared during their brief evening phone call, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "This provides us with tomorrow morning to meticulously set up the final, critical pieces of our strategy." "And what about your wife, Arthur?" Clara inquired, anticipating his next move. "She is currently under the firm impression that I am safely en route to Riverbend. She will be utterly and completely unprepared for the devastating turn of events that awaits her, completely blindsided." Thursday morning arrived, crisp and decisive. Arthur positioned himself strategically in a discreet area of the upscale hotel conference room, where Alistair was poised to present his fraudulent scheme to the assembled potential investors. Clara had ingeniously arranged for the presentation to be live-streamed to a select group of remote investors, a crucial detail that provided Arthur with the precise access needed to seamlessly hijack the feed at the most opportune, crucial moment. At precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Alistair Thorne, exuding an air of self-importance, strode confidently into the conference room, impeccably dressed in his most expensive, finely tailored suit, clutching a sleek leather presentation folder. 5 stern-faced potential investors, representing venerable pension funds and formidable development corporations, sat attentively around the polished mahogany table. "Gentlemen, thank you profoundly for granting me your valuable time this afternoon," Alistair began, his voice smooth and assured, as he connected his laptop to the room's sophisticated projection system. "I am absolutely thrilled to unveil the unprecedented profit potential of our newest, groundbreaking residential development." Alistair's meticulously crafted presentation spanned an impressive 25 acres of prime real estate, detailing projected construction costs with deceptive precision and promising exorbitant expected returns that glistened with alluring, yet false, promise. The investors, seasoned and shrewd, posed intelligent, probing questions about zoning permits, environmental impact assessments, and fluctuating market demand. Arthur waited, his heart rate steady, his focus unwavering, until Alistair reached the pivotal financial projection slide, the very heart of his deceit. As you can clearly discern from these robust figures, Alistair was confidently asserting, gesturing expansively at the screen, "Our impeccable track record consistently demonstrates unwavering profitability across all our previous projects, a testament to Thorne Ventures' reliable success." It was at this precise, climactic moment that Arthur triggered the override sequence he had covertly installed within Alistair's laptop. The large projection screen flickered violently. Then, with a jarring abruptness, displayed a new, unauthorized slide, boldly titled, "Actual Financial Records, a True Account." "What in the blazes?" Alistair bellowed, spinning wildly towards his laptop, his face contorted in a mask of panic, his fingers frantically hammering at the unresponsive keys. The hijacked presentation, now entirely under Arthur's control, began to display a damning series of Alistair's personal bank statements, starkly highlighting the embezzled funds, glaringly inflated invoices, and conspicuously missing project money. Simultaneously, a chilling audio recording began to play, filling the stunned silence of the room. It was Alistair's own voice, captured from previous phone calls, nonchalantly discussing intricate methods for clandestinely hiding stolen money from diligent auditors. "Turn it off, you idiot!" Alistair screamed, his voice now raw with desperation, but the laptop, now a puppet in Arthur's hands, remained utterly unresponsive to his commands. The presentation continued its relentless, devastating march, displaying a cascade of damning email exchanges between Alistair and Serena, explicitly revealing her intricate, undeniable role in the elaborate money laundering scheme. Screenshots of large cryptocurrency purchases, meticulous travel bookings to various non-extradition countries, and detailed research on obscure offshore banking havens flooded the screen, painting an irrefutable picture of their impending flight. One of the investors, a distinguished gentleman with a sharp gaze, slowly rose from his chair, his voice cutting through the rising chaos. "Mr. Thorne, are these documents? Are they truly authentic?" Alastair, utterly consumed by panic, lunged desperately for the projection system's power cord, but it was far too late. The irreparable damage had been inflicted. The investors, their faces a mixture of shock and outrage, had witnessed everything, and several were already, with grim determination, reaching for their phones, undoubtedly to alert authorities. "This is a grave mistake," Alastair blurted out, his voice cracked and desperate. "Someone has hacked my system. This isn't real. It's all fabricated." The final slide, Arthur's coup de grace, displayed a concise yet comprehensive summary of Alastair's extensive crimes, each point meticulously supported by verifiable documentation references. Arthur had left nothing to chance, including every damning detail. The precise totals of embezzlement, the intricate details of wire fraud, and the undeniable conspiracy charges that awaited them. Within 10 minutes, the once bustling conference room was eerily empty. Save for Alastair, who sat slumped in his chair, utterly defeated, staring blankly at the frozen, accusing presentation screen. Arthur's phone buzzed quietly with a text from Clara. "It's done." Alastair's completely finished, utterly ruined. But Arthur, ever methodical, ever patient, wasn't quite done yet. That Thursday evening, as Alastair presumably grappled with the catastrophic aftermath of his utterly destroyed presentation and the crumbling of his illicit empire, Arthur drove purposefully to Serena's office. The escrow company operated from a modest, discreet building nestled within a professional complex, a place where Serena often worked late, attending to what she claimed were complex closings. Arthur entered through the building's main entrance, his footsteps echoing softly in the quiet corridor, and walked directly to Serena's office. The door was, as he expected, slightly ajar. She was seated at her desk, engrossed in reviewing documents, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Arthur," Serena looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "I thought you were in Riverbend, darling." "My meeting ended early, Serena," Arthur replied, his voice calm, clipped, as he meticulously closed the office door behind him, sealing them both into the small, confined space. "We need to talk. Right now." Something in his tone, a cold, unyielding resolve, made Serena instinctively straighten in her chair, her professional composure beginning to fray at the edges. "About what, Arthur?" she asked, a nervous tremor in her voice. Arthur, without a word, placed a sleek tablet squarely on her desk and pressed the play icon. Alastair's arrogant voice immediately filled the room, chillingly clear. "Once the investor presentation is done, darling, and the money securely transferred, we could be anywhere we want, anywhere on the planet." Serena's face, already pale, visibly drained of all color as she heard her own voice, faint but unmistakable, responding about meticulously setting up offshore accounts and their grand plan to abandon their life and leave the country. How did you obtain this recording, Arthur?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Professional surveillance equipment, Serena, discreetly installed in our car. The very same system that, for weeks, has been meticulously capturing your every conversation, including your detailed plans with Alastair to steal $2 million and shamelessly flee to the Coral Atolls." Serena slowly, shakily, rose from her chair, her hands clutching the edge of the desk. "Arthur, please, I can explain everything. You don't understand." "Explain what, Serena?" Arthur's voice remained unnervingly calm, utterly devoid of emotion, a cold, hard blade. "Explain the protracted affair, the calculated embezzlement, the meticulously forged fake travel documents, the abhorrent plan to abandon our son, Ethan, and disappear with the criminal's stolen money, leaving him behind without a trace." "No, Arthur, it's not what you think, truly," she pleaded, desperation creeping in her voice. "Oh, but it is, Serena. It is precisely what I think. Every single bit of it." Arthur's voice, though quiet, resonated with an undeniable authority, a finality that brooked no argument. "You have been systematically committing egregious felonies, Serena. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit theft. And just this afternoon, Alastair's disastrous presentation unequivocally revealed everything to potential investors, destroying his credibility and implicating you fully." What presentation?" she whispered, her eyes wide with dawning horror. Arthur then proceeded to calmly, systematically, recount the morning's devastating events, watching with grim satisfaction as Serena's expression cyclically shifted from outright denial to paralyzing fear, and finally, to utter, desperate resignation. This will utterly destroy both of us, Arthur," she finally choked out, her voice barely audible. "No, Serena," Arthur corrected her, his gaze unwavering. "This will utterly destroy you and Alastair. I am merely the reluctant messenger, the conduit of undeniable truth." Serena slowly sank back in her chair, her professional composure finally shattering into 1,000 irreparable pieces. What do you want from me, Arthur?" she asked, her voice broken. "Nothing from you, Serena. Absolutely nothing. Everything that needs to happen is already irrevocably in motion." Arthur deliberately picked up the tablet, turning its screen towards her, displaying irrefutable evidence. Alastair's company, Thorn Ventures, is utterly finished, bankrupt beyond repair. The investors who witnessed today's devastating presentation are, as we speak, filing comprehensive complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission and various local prosecutors. Furthermore, your myriad escrow violations, Serena, will be meticulously reported to the State Licensing Board first thing tomorrow morning, ensuring the permanent revocation of your license. "Arthur, please," she begged, tears now streaming freely down her ashen face. 22 years of marriage, Serena," Arthur reiterated, his voice a low, gravelly whisper fraught with a deep, unyielding pain. 22 years of shared life, shared dreams, shared memories. And you, in your callous indifference, threw it all away, casually, for a contemptible criminal who, ironically, was planning to abandon you anyway, leaving you just as destitute as you planned to leave us. What do you mean, Arthur?" she stammered, her voice thick with confusion and dawning horror. Arthur then displayed additional, damning emails extracted from Alastair's laptop. Intimate messages to other women, travel bookings clearly for one person only, and numerous financial transfers that conspicuously excluded Serena entirely. "Alastair," Arthur concluded, his voice unwavering, "never, not once, intended to take you with him, Serena. You were a mere tool, useful for the temporary movement of illicit money, but his ultimate escape plan was always and exclusively a solo act. You were expendable." Serena stared at the screen, her eyes fixed on the irrefutable evidence, slowly, painfully, processing the full, horrifying scope of her own profound betrayal and Alastair's calculated, cynical deception. I will be filing for divorce tomorrow morning," Arthur continued, his voice resolute, closing the chapter on their shared life. "Ethan knows absolutely everything, Serena, and he, without hesitation, chose his side. He chose me." Arthur then calmly, deliberately, left Serena sitting in her silent office, utterly alone, surrounded by the shattered remnants of her once promising professional life and the damning evidence of her meticulously constructed criminal conspiracy. Friday morning dawned, bringing with it the relentless tide of consequences that Alastair and Serena, in their arrogance, had never truly anticipated. Arthur's phone rang precisely early, an unknown number flashing on the screen. He answered, a quiet resolve in his tone. "Mr. Sterling, this is Detective Evelyn Stone with the Evergreen City Metropolitan Police Department," a firm, professional woman's voice stated. "We need to urgently discuss some rather sensitive financial documents that were recently forwarded to our white-collar crime unit." "Of course, Detective," Arthur replied, his voice calm and cooperative. "When would it be most convenient for us to meet?" "This morning, if at all possible," she pressed. "We are in the process of executing search warrants at 2 critical locations, and your informed cooperation would prove immensely valuable to our investigation." By mid-morning, Arthur was seated comfortably yet formally in a Stark police conference room, calmly, methodically explaining how he had painstakingly uncovered his wife's deep involvement in Alastair's intricate embezzlement scheme. He provided Detective Stone with meticulously organized copies of all relevant evidence he had gathered, clearly articulating his role as an innocent, unwitting spouse who, through diligent inquiry, had stumbled upon and subsequently exposed these grave crimes. "Your wife's extensive escrow activities, Mr. Sterling, appear to demonstrably violate several significant federal statutes," Detective Stone observed, her gaze sharp as she reviewed the voluminous documents he had presented. "We're looking at clear wire fraud, systematic money laundering, and quite possibly serious conspiracy charges." "I understand the gravity completely, Detective," Arthur affirmed, his voice unwavering. "I am fully prepared to testify, if and when it becomes necessary, to ensure justice is served." "And the surveillance methods you employed, Mr. Sterling?" she inquired, her tone subtly probing. "Entirely legal, Detective. My own personal vehicle, my own private property, and information that is, by its very nature, publicly available." Arthur's preparations had been exhaustive, leaving no legal loopholes. "Every single piece of evidence I meticulously collected would be unequivocally admissible in a court of law." Concurrently, search warrants were being rigorously executed at Alastair's opulent office and, simultaneously, at Serena's workplace. Both locations yielded a treasure trove of additional, corroborating evidence pertaining to the financial crimes Arthur had so diligently documented. Alastair Thorne, the architect of deceit, was arrested at his home later that Friday afternoon. The local news channels immediately seized upon the sensational story, their headlines blaring. "Prominent local developer charged with embezzlement and extensive fraud." Serena, his partner in crime, was apprehended at her office merely a couple of hours later, her professional facade crumbling. Her escrow license was instantly and indefinitely suspended, pending a full criminal investigation. Arthur, observing the dramatic news coverage from the quiet solitude of his hotel room, felt a chilling, profound satisfaction as the reporters detailed the horrifying scope of the financial crimes. Alastair and Serena, in their insatiable greed, had illicitly siphoned over $300,000 from various unsuspecting sources, with grand, audacious plans to pilfer millions more. But Arthur's meticulously orchestrated revenge, though largely complete, was not entirely finished. Saturday morning, Arthur returned to the comforting familiarity of his home to find Ethan patiently waiting in the living room, a chess set already prepared on the coffee table. "Want to play, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice calm, resilient. They began setting up the board, a familiar ritual observed in comfortable, almost therapeutic silence. Ethan, Arthur mused, had undoubtedly inherited his own methodical approach to complex problem solving, but he had also, impressively, developed his own distinct, formidable strategic instincts. Mom called. Ethan quietly announced, moving his opening pawn with a precise, deliberate gesture. "From jail." Arthur's hand paused over a chess piece. "What did she want, son?" "To explain, Dad. To apologize." Ethan captured one of Arthur's palling pieces, a swift, decisive move. "I didn't take the call. I just listened to the voicemail." Arthur studied the board. The black and white squares a metaphor for the stark choices made. "You don't have to feel compelled to choose sides, Ethan. She is, after all, still your mother." "She made her choice, Dad," Ethan stated, his voice resonating with an unexpected hardness, a timbre that reminded Arthur, with a pang, of his own unwavering resolve. "She chose when she decided to steal money and brazenly leave the country, abandoning everything. Some choices," Ethan concluded, his gaze firm, "simply cannot be undone. Ever." They played 3 intense games that morning. Ethan, impressively, won 2 of them, demonstrating his burgeoning mastery. Sunday brought an unexpected, yet significant visitor. Arthur was engrossed in reviewing the intricate paperwork for his impending divorce when the doorbell chimed softly. Through the security camera's lens, he observed a woman in her early 50s, her face etched with weariness, her hair streaked with gray. "Are you Arthur Sterling?" she inquired, her voice polite but strained, as he opened the door. "Yes, I am," Arthur confirmed. "I'm Genevieve Thorne, Alistair's sister." She held up a slender manila folder, its contents discreetly veiled. "I truly believe you should see this, Mr. Sterling." Arthur, intrigued, invited her into the living room. Genevieve opened the folder, revealing a damning collection of financial documents and stark photographs. "Alistair has been systematically stealing from our family for many years, Mr. Sterling," she revealed, her voice heavy with a long-held pain. "Our beloved father bequeathed us a thriving construction business upon his passing. Alistair was meant to manage it collaboratively with me, as partners, but instead, he has been covertly siphoning vast sums of money from our shared accounts to brazenly fund his extravagant, utterly unearned lifestyle." The documents unequivocally demonstrated a clear, consistent pattern of theft extending back a full 5 years. Alistair, it was shockingly clear, had ruthlessly exploited his sister's legitimate business as his personal, illicit bank account, illicitly extracting hundreds of thousands of dollars without any authorization whatsoever. "Why are you disclosing all of this to me now, Miss Thorne?" Arthur asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Because Alistair, in his boundless narcissism, will undoubtedly attempt to blame everyone and everything except himself for his downfall. He will claim that your wife, Serena, somehow manipulated him, that he was merely the unfortunate victim." Genevieve's expression was grim, resolute. "I want the world to know, Mr. Sterling, that Alistair has been a hardened thief long before he ever crossed paths with Serena. He is a criminal by nature, not by influence." Arthur quietly accepted the additional documents. "I will personally ensure that the prosecutors see these. They will be invaluable." "There's even more, Mr. Sterling," Genevieve added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Alistair owes substantial sums of money to some exceedingly unforgiving people. Contractors, suppliers, shady private lenders, individuals who operate outside the confines of the law. Genevieve rose to leave, her message delivered. He's not merely facing a lengthy prison sentence, Mr. Sterling. He's facing individuals who decidedly do not settle their disputes in courtrooms. After Genevieve's departure, Arthur immediately contacted Detective Stone and arranged to provide the extensive, additional evidence of Alastair's deeply entrenched criminal activities. The pattern of theft, Arthur realized with a jolt, was far more pervasive and extensive than he had initially comprehended. Monday morning brought the inevitable confrontation Arthur had quietly anticipated for weeks. As he exited the federal courthouse, having just officially filed the final divorce papers, Alastair Thorne materialized in the sprawling parking lot, a specter of his former self. The man looked utterly haggard, his face unshaven, his expensive clothes now rumpled and clearly slept in, a stark contrast to his usual immaculate appearance. "You son of a witch!" Alastair snarled, his voice hoarse with rage, as he aggressively advanced towards Arthur's car, his fists clenching and unclenching. "You utterly destroyed everything. My life, my business, my future." Arthur, unmoved, offered no verbal response, merely continuing to calmly, methodically load the freshly filed divorce documents into the trunk of his vehicle. "I know you meticulously set me up, you manipulative bastard." Alastair continued, his voice rising in volume, punctuated by raw fury. "That entire fake investor meeting, the sophisticated computer hack, that was all you. Every calculated bit of it." "I didn't hack anything, Alastair," Arthur stated, his voice unervingly calm, utterly devoid of any emotional inflection. "I simply ensured that the right people, the relevant authorities, were made aware of information that was already and demonstrably present on your own computer systems. Information you carelessly left for anyone to find, given enough time." Alastair stepped dangerously closer, his hands now clenched into tight, menacing fists. "You irrevocably ruined my life, Sterling." "No, Alastair," Arthur countered, his gaze firm, unwavering. "You, and only you, ruined your own life. I merely provided the comprehensive, incontrovertible documentation of your self-destruction. Serena told me you've been stalking us for months." Alastair spat, his eyes narrowed with a desperate, frantic anger. "That's illegal surveillance. That's blatant harassment. You're going to pay for this." "Recording conversations within my own personal vehicle is not illegal, Alastair," Arthur calmly corrected him, his voice level, authoritative. "Following someone on public roads, adhering to all traffic laws, is not illegal. Copying files from a computer system to which I had perfectly legal, administrative access is not illegal." Arthur paused, allowing the gravity of his next words to sink in. "However, embezzling $300,000, engaging in systematic wire fraud, and plotting to flee the country with stolen funds is, in fact, very, very illegal. And those are the actions for which you will definitively pay." Enraged, Alastair, with a sudden, desperate lunge, swung a wild, telegraphed haymaker towards Arthur's head, an act of pure, unadulterated fury. Arthur, however, had meticulously anticipated this precise moment. He had, in fact, dedicated hours to researching various self-defense techniques, preparing for this very confrontation. With fluid precision, Arthur deftly ducked beneath the poorly aimed punch and, simultaneously, drove his shoulder with controlled force into Alastair's midsection, expertly utilizing the man's own charging momentum to slam him forcefully against the side of Arthur's car. Alastair's expensive designer watch scraped audibly against the cold metal as Arthur swiftly twisted his arm excruciatingly behind his back, immobilizing him. "Listen to me very carefully, Alistair," Arthur stated, his voice a low, intense whisper, cold as steel. "You are unequivocally going to prison. Serena is unequivocally going to prison. Your company, Thorn Ventures, is utterly bankrupt. Your carefully constructed reputation is irrevocably destroyed, and every single person you have ruthlessly stolen from is now poised to sue you into abject poverty. Your life, as you know it, is over." Alistair struggled violently against Arthur's unyielding grip, grunting in pain. "Let me go, you bastard. Release me." "But here, Alistair," Arthur continued, his voice unwavering, "is the fundamental truth you simply refuse to grasp. This isn't merely about the money you so brazenly stole, nor is it even about the tawdry affair. This, Alistair, is fundamentally about your insufferable, arrogant belief that you were inherently smarter, inherently superior to everyone else." Arthur, with a final decisive shove, released Alistair, who stumbled away, clutching his throbbing arm, his bravado finally cracking under the weight of his defeat. "You genuinely believe my wife was merely another facile conquest, a disposable plaything, and that I was nothing more than another clueless, oblivious husband. You arrogantly assumed your investors were unsophisticated simpletons, easily duped, and that your elaborate crimes were clever, unassailable masterpieces of deception." Arthur calmly straightened his impeccably tailored jacket, his gaze piercing. "You, Alistair, were catastrophically wrong about absolutely everything." Alistair, his face pale and contorted in a mixture of rage and terror, backed slowly towards his car, his last vestiges of defiance crumbling. "This isn't over, Sterling. You haven't heard the last of this." "Yes, Alistair," Arthur responded, his voice calm, resolute, as he stepped into his own vehicle. "It is most definitively over. You just don't have the capacity to realize it yet." Arthur then drove away, leaving Alistair standing utterly alone and defeated in the sterile expanse of the courthouse parking lot, a broken man. That evening, Ethan was patiently waiting in the bright kitchen when Arthur returned home, a stack of homework beside him. The news reported that Alistair's company, Thorn Ventures, officially filed for bankruptcy today, Dad, Ethan announced, looking up from his textbooks, his gaze thoughtful. "An inevitable and utterly predictable result of brazenly stealing operating capital and systematically mismanaging funds." "And your mother, Ethan?" Arthur inquired, bracing himself for the answer. "Grand jury indictment scheduled for next week, Dad. Wire fraud, money laundering, and serious conspiracy charges. Her legal team is already working furiously." Arthur sat across from his son at the kitchen table, the gravity of the situation settling heavily between them. "She is unequivocally going to prison, Ethan." Ethan nodded slowly, the youthful vivacity in his eyes momentarily dimmed. "How long do you think, Dad?" "Federal sentencing guidelines suggest a term of 3 to 5 years, assuming she fully cooperates with prosecutors, providing them with all necessary information." "And then what happens, Dad?" Ethan pressed, seeking to understand the complete trajectory of this devastating consequence. Arthur considered the profound weight of the question, the stark reality of Serena's future. "Then, Ethan, she begins her life anew, with absolutely nothing. No professional license, no established career, no financial resources. A felony record will make securing any meaningful employment exceedingly difficult, if not impossible." Do you feel bad for her, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice soft, contemplative. Arthur's mind drifted back through the vast tapestry of 22 years of marriage, recalling the woman he had completely trusted, the mother of his cherished son. "I feel a profound sadness, Ethan," he admitted honestly, his gaze distant. "Not for the person she ultimately became, but for the idealized version of her I once knew, or perhaps, more accurately, for the person I believed her to be. But that person, I've come to realize, never truly existed." 2 weeks later, the phone rang, displaying Clara Thorne's number. "Alastair has formally pleaded guilty to all charges, Arthur," she informed him, her voice holding a note of grim finality. 7 years in federal prison, full restitution demanded for all stolen funds, and a lifetime ban from any future securities trading. As for Serena, she's still negotiating fiercely with prosecutors, her lawyers desperately attempting to reduce the severity of her charges in exchange for her testimony against Alastair. Arthur felt no surprise. Serena, he knew, had always been, above all else, utterly practical, ruthlessly pragmatic. "Are you satisfied with this outcome, Arthur?" Clara inquired, her voice holding a subtle curiosity. Arthur paused, reflecting on the intricate, brutal chess game that had unfolded. Alastair's life was irrevocably shattered, his career utterly finished, his reputation in tatters, facing years of incarceration. Serena had lost everything she had painstakingly worked for, and would spend a significant portion of her middle age branded as a convicted felon. "Justice, Clara," Arthur said finally, choosing his words carefully, "isn't always a source of profound personal satisfaction, not in the way one might imagine. But in this case, it was undeniably necessary. A precise, unequivocal resolution. The divorce proceedings, propelled by the undeniable weight of Serena's guilty plea to federal charges, moved with startling speed. Arthur, armed with irrefutable evidence, swiftly retained full custody of Ethan and successfully secured the vast majority of their shared marital assets, as Serena's flagrant criminal actions had unequivocally voided any legitimate claim she might have had to their jointly acquired property. 6 months after the initial, devastating discovery of the affair, Arthur found himself standing in the quiet sanctuary of his home office, meticulously reviewing the final, legally binding documents that severed the last ties to his past. The house itself felt subtly different now. Quieter, certainly, but also imbued with a newfound sense of cleanliness, purged of the deceit that had once permeated its walls. Ethan appeared in the doorway, a familiar sight, holding his cherished chess set. "Want to play, Dad?" he asked, his voice carrying the light invitation of a shared tradition. "Always, son. Always." They settled into their accustomed places in the living room, the same well-worn spot where they had engaged in hundreds of games over the years, a silent testament to their enduring bond. Yet this time, the ritual felt profoundly different. They were no longer merely father and son. They were partners, fellow survivors who had weathered an unimaginable betrayal together, emerging stronger, more connected. "I've been seriously thinking about my college applications, Dad," Ethan said, moving his opening pawn with thoughtful consideration, initiating their familiar strategic dance. "Do you have any preferences for where I might apply?" "Somewhere far from here, son. Definitely a place that offers a genuine fresh start, a clean slate," Arthur replied, his gaze fixed on the chessboard, yet his mind envisioning a broader future. Ethan captured one of Arthur's pawns, a decisive, forward-moving step. "You know, Dad, you could come too. We could sell the company, start something entirely new together, somewhere entirely different." Arthur considered the proposition, his analytical mind weighing its profound merit. Sterling Solutions, his brainchild, was undoubtedly successful, a testament to his ingenuity, but it was also inextricably linked to the painful memories of building a life, a future with Serena. Starting over, shedding the old skin, might indeed be precisely what both of them desperately needed. "We'll see, Ethan," Arthur said, making his next strategic move, his voice thoughtful. One significant decision at a time. They continued to play in comfortable, contemplative silence, the fading sunlight casting long shadows through the windows. The future, while undeniably uncertain, was unequivocally theirs to meticulously shape piece by piece. 3 months later, Arthur received an unexpected visitor, her presence signaling a new, unforeseen chapter in the unfolding saga. He was deeply engrossed in his work in the office when the doorbell resonated through the house. Through the crisp image of his security camera, he observed a poised, middle-aged woman in a smart business suit, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. "Mr. Sterling, I'm Agent Beatrice Vance with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Division," she stated, her voice calm and authoritative. Arthur, his curiosity piqued, invited her in, subtly bracing himself for whatever fresh complications might be emerging from the tangled web of Alastair's and Serena's crimes. "We've been actively investigating a broader, far more extensive network of financial fraud," Agent Vance explained, placing her briefcase with a soft thud on the coffee table. "Your ex-wife, Serena, and Alastair Thorne were in fact integral components of a much larger, insidious operation." The briefcase, once opened, revealed a chilling collection of photographs and damning documents, meticulously detailing previously unknown connections between Alastair's embezzlement activities and a sophisticated, multi-state money laundering ring. Serena's seemingly minor escrow manipulations, it became horrifyingly clear, had facilitated crimes of a far greater magnitude and reach than Arthur had ever initially uncovered. "How extensive was this network, Agent Vance?" Arthur inquired, his professional interest overriding his personal pain. "Over $2 million in documented fraud, Mr. Sterling, spanning across 4 distinct states. Alastair, it turns out, was merely a middle-level operator, a cog in the machine, certainly not the criminal mastermind." Agent Vance then showed Arthur surveillance photos of various individuals he didn't recognize, faces of a shadowy underworld. "His cooperation with our ongoing investigation, I must add, has been remarkably limited, almost non-existent." "And what, precisely, do you require from me now, Agent Vance?" "Your unparalleled technical expertise, Mr. Sterling. The digital evidence you so meticulously collected on Alastair was far more comprehensive, far more incriminating than anything our own investigation managed to unearth. We desperately need your assistance in understanding the full, intricate scope of this sprawling criminal network." Arthur, recognizing the profound impact he could have, readily agreed to consult with the FBI, providing his unparalleled technical analysis of the vast digital evidence he had so diligently collected. The ensuing investigation unequivocally revealed that Alastair's crimes were not isolated incidents, but rather integral components of a highly sophisticated, deeply entrenched operation specifically targeting small investors and vulnerable development projects across the entire Southeast region. The broader, far-reaching investigation continued for an additional 8 arduous months, ultimately culminating in 17 more arrests and the impressive recovery of over $5 million in stolen funds. Arthur's methodical documentation, his meticulous attention to detail, proved absolutely crucial in seamlessly connecting the various disparate crimes and, most importantly, identifying the shadowy leadership of the entire criminal operation. But the investigation also unearthed a deeply unsettling truth, something Arthur had never even considered. Serena had been deliberately recruited into this vast criminal network specifically because of her direct access to escrow accounts and, perhaps even more sinister, her direct relationship with Arthur's highly successful business, Sterling Solutions. They intentionally targeted your wife, Mr. Sterling, Agent Vance calmly explained during one of their many meetings, her voice devoid of judgment, because they sought a backdoor entry, a direct conduit to your company's robust financial systems. Alastair's entire seduction of Serena, therefore, was not merely a crime of passion, but a deliberate, calculated strategy, a means to insidiously get close to your flourishing business operations. Arthur absorbed this chilling information with his characteristic external calm, but internally, a cold, intense rage began to build, a slow-burning inferno. The affair, he now understood with gut-wrenching clarity, hadn't been an impulsive, reckless act of passion. It had been a cold, calculated assault, a strategic invasion aimed directly at the very heart of everything he had meticulously built, everything he held dear. Did Serena fully comprehend this, Agent Vance? Arthur asked, his voice tight. Did she know she was being used as a pawn in this larger scheme? We believe she was recruited gradually, Mr. Sterling. Agent Vance clarified, her tone sympathetic. It likely started with small, seemingly innocuous favors, then slowly, insidiously escalated to major crimes. A classic manipulation pattern often employed by these types of criminal enterprises. Arthur remained unsure whether this devastating revelation somehow lessened Serena's profound betrayal or, conversely, amplified its callousness. She might have been manipulated, yes, but she had also, without coercion, made conscious, adult choices to flagrantly break the law and irrevocably betray her family, her husband, and her son. The final, definitive phase of Arthur's meticulously executed revenge came to its conclusion 18 months after he had first, horrifyingly, heard Alastair Thorne's voice through his car speakers, a moment forever seared into his memory. Serena was released from prison on supervised probation, pending her official sentencing hearing. Her comprehensive cooperation with the FBI's sprawling investigation had undeniably reduced her potential prison time, a small concession, but she still faced a minimum of 2 years in federal prison and a permanent, lifetime exclusion from any and all financial services professions. Arthur was deeply immersed in his work in his office when Ethan, ever perceptive, announced that Serena was standing at the front door. "Do you wish to see her, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice carefully neutral. Arthur saved his work, then walked slowly, deliberately, to the foyer. Through the clear glass panels beside the entrance, he could distinctly see Serena standing on their front porch. She appeared visibly older, undeniably thinner, her once vibrant appearance now faded, clad in simple, unadorned clothes that clearly bespoke a discount store. Arthur opened the door, but made no gesture, no implicit invitation for her to step inside, maintaining a resolute boundary. "Hello, Arthur," Serena said quietly, her voice tinged with a fragile hope. "Serena." His voice was flat, acknowledging her presence, nothing more. "Arthur, I was hoping we could speak about Ethan, perhaps about the future." She ventured, a desperate plea in her eyes. "Ethan is 18 now." "Serena," Arthur stated, his voice firm, unwavering. "He is an adult, fully capable of making his own independent decisions about his relationships, including with you." Serena's eyes welled with unshed tears, her composure finally breaking. "I know, Arthur. I know I destroyed everything, absolutely everything. I know you will never, ever forgive me for what I've done, but please, I want you to know that I'm still his mother, and I always will be." Arthur studied the woman who had shared his life, for over 2 decades, the woman he had once loved with unwavering devotion. The affair, the calculated crimes, the chillingly planned abandonment. All of it had served to meticulously peel back the layers, revealing a stranger he had never truly known, a person fundamentally different from the one he had cherished. Ethan is currently at college, Serena, Arthur stated, a quiet pride infusing his voice. Early admission to Commonwealth University. Full scholarship for computer science and business. He's thriving. A complex mixture of pride and profound pain flickered across Serena's face simultaneously. Oh, Arthur, that's truly wonderful news. He always was so incredibly brilliant, wasn't he? He is, Arthur confirmed simply, and he has, through all of this, learned some profoundly valuable lessons about the fragility of trust and the harsh reality of consequences. Arthur, please, Serena implored, her voice thick with raw emotion. I need you to understand that Alistair manipulated me. The FBI, they thoroughly explained how these criminal networks recruit people just like me, exploiting vulnerabilities. I truly never meant for things to escalate so far. But they did escalate that far, Serena, Arthur countered, his voice firm, unyielding. You made choices, Serena. Adult choices. And those choices carry adult, devastating consequences. Serena wiped the tears from her eyes with a trembling hand. Is there any chance, Arthur, after I serve my time, that we could rebuild something? Not marriage, of course, but perhaps a semblance of friendship? For Ethan's sake, if nothing else? Arthur considered the question, his gaze unwavering. The woman standing before him, pleading for a connection, was the same woman who had committed egregious financial crimes that could have utterly destroyed his entire business and siphoned his son's carefully accumulated college fund into obscure offshore accounts. She had, with chilling deliberation, planned to abandon Ethan, their only child, for a life of ill-gotten luxury with a convicted felon. I don't think so, Serena, Arthur said finally, the words of pronouncement, a definitive closing of a chapter. Some bridges, once burned to the ground, simply cannot be rebuilt. The damage is too profound, too irreversible. Serena nodded slowly, the last flicker of hope dying in her eyes. Understand, Arthur. I truly do. Can you please tell Ethan that I love him very much and that I am incredibly proud of the remarkable man he has become? You can tell him yourself, Serena, Arthur replied, his voice devoid of warmth. He has your contact information. He knows how to reach you. Arthur then quietly, decisively closed the door, ending the last formal conversation he would ever have with his ex-wife. Through the window, he watched Serena walk with a heavy, defeated gait to a rusted, compact car and slowly, deliberately drive away, receding from his life, a ghost of a past that no longer held power over him. 6 months later, Ethan called from Commonwealth University, his voice brimming with enthusiastic news about his latest semester project. Dad, you are absolutely going to love this, he exclaimed, palpable excitement in his tone. I'm developing an advanced AI system capable of detecting complex financial fraud patterns in real time. A revolutionary tool that can identify and halt embezzlement schemes before they even fully mature or cause widespread damage. Arthur smiled, a deep, knowing satisfaction spreading through him, recognizing the brilliant fusion of his son's inherent methodical intelligence with the hard-earned, bitter wisdom gleaned from first-hand experience with human treachery. Any particular, shall we say, personal inspiration for this groundbreaking project, son? Arthur inquired, a subtle twinkle in his eye. Let's just say, Dad, I've had some rather unique personal experience with financial criminals, Ethan replied, a hint of wry humor in his voice. My professor thinks it holds immense potential to be commercially viable, a truly disruptive technology. So, Dad, are you interested in becoming my business partner? I was sincerely hoping you'd ask, Ethan, Arthur responded, his heart swelling with pride. 2 years after Serena's supervised release from federal prison, Arthur received a final, unexpected piece of information concerning Alastair Thorne. Agent Beatrice Vance, her voice as professional and direct as ever, called with an update on the broader, now winding down, financial fraud investigation. Alastair Thorne was killed in prison last week, Mr. Sterling. She stated without preamble, her tone matter of fact. He was tragically stabbed by another inmate during a violent dispute over unresolved gambling debts. Arthur felt no surge of satisfaction at the news, no triumphant glee, only a quiet, almost profound sense of closure. Alastair's tumultuous story had ended precisely as many criminal narratives ultimately conclude, with senseless violence and a tragic, utterly wasted life. What, if anything, about the rest of the network, Agent Vance? Arthur asked, his interest purely analytical now. Dismantled completely, Mr. Sterling. Every single operative apprehended. 17 total convictions, full asset forfeiture of all illicit gains, and a comprehensive victims fund has been meticulously established for restitution. Your technical work, Mr. Sterling, was absolutely instrumental in achieving this unprecedented success. Arthur thanked Agent Vance for the update and quietly ended the call. Alastair Thorne was unequivocally dead. Serena Sterling was now living a diminished existence in a small, efficiency apartment, working as a humble restaurant hostess, stripped of her former prestige. And the sprawling criminal network that had so ruthlessly targeted his family, his life, was utterly destroyed, dismantled piece by painstaking piece. Justice, Arthur reflected, wasn't always a dramatic, theatrical spectacle. Sometimes it was simply thorough, methodical, and chillingly precise. 5 years later, Arthur Sterling stood, a figure of quiet accomplishment, in the sleek, modern conference room of Sterling Thorne Cyber Solutions, the innovative cybersecurity company he had proudly co-founded with Ethan after selling his original enterprise, Sterling Solutions. The subtle irony embedded within the new company's name, a nod to the two families intertwined by betrayal and rebirth, was certainly not lost on either of them. Clara Thorne, now divorced and unburdened, had become their inaugural major investor, her substantial divorce settlement providing the critical seed capital for their ambitious startup venture. The cutting-edge fraud detection system is now fully prepared for its intensive beta testing phase. Ethan announced confidently to the assembled team of brilliant programmers and dedicated security specialists, his voice strong and clear. 3 major, highly respected financial institutions have already eagerly agreed to pilot the software in their live environments. Arthur watched his son, a profound sense of quiet pride swelling within him, as Ethan expertly presented the complex technical specifications, his understanding of the material absolute. Ethan, Arthur observed, had indeed inherited his own analytical, strategic mind, but had, with admirable self-awareness, developed his own distinct, highly effective leadership style, one far more collaborative and inclusive than Arthur's more solitary, independent approach. After the productive meeting concluded, Arthur and Ethan walked together to their adjoining, meticulously organized offices. "Any regrets, Dad?" Ethan asked, settling comfortably behind his desk, which was, as usual, meticulously covered with multiple computer monitors, stacks of programming manuals, and intricate schematics. Arthur considered the profound question, letting it hang in the air for a moment. 5 years prior, He had been a highly successful software entrepreneur, enjoying a comfortable marriage and a seemingly promising future. Today, he was an even more successful, perhaps even visionary, entrepreneur, blessed with a brilliant, insightful business partner in his son, and possessed of a hard-earned, deeply etched wisdom about the complexities of trust and the devastating realities of betrayal. "No regrets, Ethan," Arthur said, his voice firm, resolute. "Some lessons in life, while undeniably expensive, proved to be unequivocally worth learning." Ethan nodded in silent agreement, a shared understanding passing between them, and returned to his complex programming, the rhythmic tapping of keys filling the quiet space. Arthur watched his son work, recognizing the same methodical patience, the same unwavering focus that had served them both so incredibly well during their darkest, most challenging period. The phone on Arthur's desk buzzed with the vibration of an incoming call. The caller ID displayed unknown number. He answered, "Arthur Sterling." "Mr. Sterling, this is Detective Hayes with the Evergreen City Police Department," a grave voice stated. "I'm calling concerning a very sensitive incident involving your ex-wife." Arthur felt a sudden, unwelcome tightening in his stomach, a premonition of ill tidings. "What kind of incident, Detective?" he inquired, his voice guarded. "Serena Sterling was discovered deceased in her apartment this morning, Mr. Sterling. Apparent suicide." She left a note, and in it, she specifically mentioned both you and your son, Ethan. Arthur slowly, heavily sat down, his mind struggling to process the stark, unexpected information. He knew Serena had been struggling immensely since her release from prison, unable to secure stable employment, largely isolated from her former friends, and living in a state of quiet, desperate poverty. "What precisely did the notes say, Detective?" Arthur asked, his voice strained. "I would much prefer to discuss the contents in person, if that's at all possible, Mr. Sterling. Could you please come down to the station?" An hour later, Arthur sat in the sterile confines of a police conference room, reading Serena's final, heart-wrenching letter. Her once elegant handwriting was now shaky, almost illegible in places, but the raw, desperate message was agonizingly clear, each word a desperate cry from the abyss. "Arthur and Ethan, I know, with absolute certainty, that I utterly destroyed our beautiful family and irrevocably betrayed your precious trust. I know that merely saying I'm sorry can never, ever be enough to atone for the depth of my transgressions. But I want you both to know, from the depths of my shattered soul, that losing both of you was truly the single worst consequence of all my choices. Not the agonizing prison time, not the devastating destruction of my career, not the suffocating shame of poverty. No, losing my family, losing you both, was the unbearable price I simply could no longer bear to pay. Ethan, my beloved son, you were, without a doubt, the very best part of my entire life, and I am filled with an overwhelming, profound pride in the remarkable man you have grown to become. Arthur, my dear husband, you were in truth a far better husband to me than I ever deserved, and I am eternally sorry, truly, for so carelessly, so callously throwing away 22 years of what I now realize was genuine, unwavering love, all for something utterly worthless, something that ultimately offered me nothing but ruin. I desperately hope that both of you, in time, can find a measure of peace." Arthur slowly, carefully folded the letter, his emotions a complex tangle of sorrow, regret, and a lingering, profound sense of loss, and handed it back to Detective Hayes. "Are there any arrangements we need to make, Detective?" Arthur asked, his voice subdued. "She requested cremation, Mr. Sterling. No formal service, no fanfare, just a quiet cremation. However, She did leave very specific instructions for her ashes to be scattered at Sapphire Lake, the place where you used to take family vacations, where you made so many happy memories. Arthur's mind immediately conjured vivid images of those cherished trips. Ethan, a small boy, eagerly learning to fish with his father, his face alight with excitement. Serena, serene and beautiful, quietly reading novels beneath the dappled shade of a large umbrella. All of them, together, laughing and playing spirited board games in their rented lakeside cabin. Memories of a family whole, vibrant, and ostensibly happy, before the insidious betrayal, before the devastating crimes, before everything they had built together had fallen apart, irrevocably shattered. That same evening, Arthur called Ethan at Commonwealth University to gently inform him of his mother's death. "How do you genuinely feel about it, son?" Ethan asked after a long, heavy silence, his voice fragile. "Sad, Ethan," Arthur admitted honestly, his voice thick with emotion. "Not for the broken person she became, but for the idealized woman she used to be, or perhaps more accurately, for the woman I desperately wish she had remained." Do you want to scatter her ashes at the lake?" as she requested. Arthur considered the profound weight of the request. Returning to that lake, a repository of cherished, bittersweet memories, would mean confronting the lingering echoes of better, simpler times of a family that had once existed whole and intact before the corrosive forces of greed and betrayal had utterly annihilated it. "Yes, Ethan," Arthur said finally, his voice gaining a quiet resolve. "She was your mother, and despite everything, she deserves that much." That final, peaceful gesture. 2 weeks later, Arthur and Ethan, united in their somber purpose, drove to the tranquil shores of Sapphire Lake, a simple urn containing Serena's ashes resting between them. They rented a small, weathered fishing boat and motored slowly, deliberately, to the very center of the expansive lake, the precise spot where they had spent countless idyllic summer afternoons years earlier, casting lines and dreaming dreams. Ethan, with quiet reverence, scattered the ashes without any formal ceremony, allowing the fine, pale dust to drift gently across the water's shimmering surface, dissolving into the setting sun. "Do you truly think she regretted everything, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice soft, contemplative, as they watched the last vestiges of the ashes disappear into the twilight. "I believe she regretted the profound consequences of her actions, Ethan," Arthur replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Whether she truly, deeply understood the immeasurable harm she inflicted, the irreparable damage she caused to our lives, is something, I fear, we will never, ever truly know with certainty." They sat in a comfortable, companionable silence for several minutes, watching the last golden rays of the sun paint the sky with vibrant hues over the tranquil water, marking the end of a long, arduous chapter. "Are we truly done with all of this now, Dad?" Ethan finally asked, breaking the stillness. Arthur started the boat's engine, the gentle hum a signal of their return, and slowly turned towards the distant shore. "Yes, son," he affirmed, his voice resolute. "We are done. Absolutely done." The drive home was quiet, each lost in their own contemplative thoughts. Arthur felt a monumental weight, a burden he hadn't fully realized he was carrying, slowly lifting from his shoulders. It wasn't forgiveness, not precisely, but a profound, undeniable sense of completion, of justice served and wounds beginning to heal. Serena's tragic story was finally finished. Alistair's destructive narrative was utterly concluded. The vast criminal network that had so cruelly targeted his family was either imprisoned or had met their own grim ends. Only the future remained, vast and unwritten, and that future, Arthur knew with unwavering certainty, belonged solely to him and to Ethan, unburdened by the ghosts of the past. 6 months later, Arthur received an invitation that, despite all he had endured, genuinely surprised him. Clara Thorne was remarrying. Her new partner, a retired Federal Bureau of Investigations agent she had, rather fittingly, met during the protracted financial fraud investigation. The wedding was an intimate, understated affair, attended only by immediate family and a handful of close, trusted friends. "Arthur, I truly wanted to thank you personally," Clara said during the relaxed reception, approaching him at the bar, her smile genuine, her eyes clear. "Not just for your invaluable assistance in helping to utterly destroy Alistair's life, but for demonstrating to me, by your own unwavering example, that revenge, despite its allure, doesn't have to become a corrosive force that consumes one's very soul." "What do you mean by that, Clara?" Arthur asked, genuinely curious. "You could have so easily succumbed to an overwhelming obsession with hatred," she elaborated, swirling the champagne in her glass. "Allowed it to poison your precious relationship with Ethan. Spent years consumed by the single-minded desire to relentlessly punish Alistair and Serena, allowing their actions to define your entire existence." Clara took a thoughtful sip. "Instead, Arthur, you approached the entire ordeal not as a personal vendetta, but like a complex business problem. Methodically, dispassionately, completely. You dismantled them with chilling precision, and then, most admirably, you moved on, channeling your formidable energy into building something vastly superior, something truly meaningful." Arthur nodded slowly, a profound understanding passing between them. "Hate, Clara, is an incredibly expensive emotion. It drains resources, consumes vital energy, and yields no true return. I simply had far better, more constructive things to do with my time and my spirit." Alistair, tragically, never grasped that fundamental truth. Even confined within the cold walls of prison, he was still, to his very last breath, consumed by plotting revenge against you, against me, still pathologically convinced that he was the ultimate victim. Clara's smile was grim, tinged with a faint melancholy. "He died angry and utterly alone, Arthur, precisely because he could never, ever let go of his petty grievances, his corrosive resentments." Arthur raised his glass in a silent toast. To moving forward, Clara. To a future unburdened by the past. As Arthur drove home from the intimate wedding reception, the events of the past 5 years replayed in his mind, a vivid, sobering montage. He had uncovered his wife's devastating betrayal, meticulously exposed a vast criminal conspiracy, effectively destroyed 2 lives, painstakingly built a new, thriving business, and watched his son blossom into an accomplished, resilient young man. The same methodical, analytical approach that had served him so exceptionally well in the cutthroat world of business had, unexpectedly, also served him perfectly in the pursuit of justice, masquerading as revenge. There had been no dramatic, emotionally charged confrontations beyond the necessary, no illegal or morally compromising actions on his part, no violations of his own deeply held ethical code. Only careful, meticulous documentation, precisely timed strategic maneuvers, and patient, unwavering execution. Ethan was waiting when Arthur arrived home, a comforting, familiar presence, seated in the living room with his ever-present chess set. "Want to play a game, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with the easy camaraderie of equals. "Always, son, always." They set up the board, a ritual hundreds of times repeated, each piece finding its familiar square. But now they were more than father and son. They were true equals, thriving business partners, co-founders of a remarkable enterprise, resilient survivors of a profound betrayal that had, paradoxically, made them both infinitely stronger, more astute. I've actually been contemplating expanding the company significantly, Dad, Ethan said, moving his opening piece, signaling the start of their strategic dance. Venturing into international markets, securing lucrative government contracts, perhaps even establishing a high-level consulting arm for major corporations. Ambitious indeed, my son, Arthur replied, his gaze thoughtfully surveying the chessboard, weighing the scope of Ethan's vision. Do you genuinely believe we're ready for that unprecedented level of growth, for such a global leap? I think, Dad, Ethan countered, his eyes bright with quiet confidence, that we are now ready for absolutely anything. Arthur made his move, then settled back, a sense of profound contentment washing over him, to carefully study his son's intricate strategy. Ethan, he realized with a surge of pride, had learned his lessons exceptionally well, not just the nuanced complexities of chess, but also the invaluable virtues of patience, meticulous planning, and the paramount importance of thinking not just one, but several moves ahead in the grand game of life. Outside their windows, the glittering skyline of Evergreen City pierced the gathering darkness, a beacon of progress and opportunity. Somewhere within that sprawling metropolis, other individuals were undoubtedly, at that very moment, discovering their own agonizing betrayals, facing their own personal crises, making their own pivotal choices that would irrevocably define their futures. Arthur silently hoped they would choose as wisely, as methodically as he had. The game continued, a symphony of comfortable silence, broken only by the gentle click of chess pieces. Two survivors, forging their next remarkable chapter, one careful, deliberate move at a time. 3 years later, Arthur Sterling stood, a silent witness to justice, before a grand federal courthouse, observing the sentencing of the final, unrepentant member of Alastair Thorne's sprawling criminal network. The exhaustive, far-reaching investigation that had initially sparked with his quiet, devastating discovery of Serena's affair had ultimately culminated in an astounding 23 convictions and the impressive recovery of over $8 million in stolen funds, a testament to relentless effort. Agent Beatrice Vance approached Arthur as they emerged from the imposing courthouse, her expression one of deep respect. "Mr. Sterling, this concludes our comprehensive investigation," she stated, extending her hand for a firm handshake. "Your unparalleled technical expertise and meticulous evidence collection were, quite simply, instrumental in making this entire case possible, in bringing these criminals to justice." "Justice was served, Agent Vance," Arthur replied simply, his voice calm, accepting the compliment with quiet dignity. "More than that, Mr. Sterling," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "Your unique approach not only secured convictions, but also proactively prevented dozens, if not hundreds, of other innocent victims from being defrauded. The groundbreaking early detection system you and Ethan developed is now, I'm pleased to inform you, being adopted and utilized by major banks nationwide, revolutionizing financial security." Arthur nodded, a subtle satisfaction in his eyes. The sophisticated fraud detection software, born from Ethan's innovative college project, had indeed evolved into a truly indispensable system that had already prevented millions of dollars in potential losses for countless financial institutions across the country. "One more thing, Mr. Sterling," Agent Vance said, handing Arthur a sealed manila envelope. "We found this among Alastair's personal effects after he died in prison. We thought you, of all people, should see it." Arthur opened the envelope. Inside lay a stark, grainy photograph of himself, captured from a distance, leaving the courthouse after his painful divorce proceedings had concluded years prior. Scrawled defiantly on the back, in Alistair's unmistakable hand, were the chilling words, "Game isn't over yet, Sterling." Arthur studied the photograph for a long moment, the tangible proof of his adversary's enduring, twisted delusion, then quietly handed it back to Agent Vance. "Actually, Agent Vance," Arthur stated, his voice carrying the weight of ultimate victory. "It is absolutely over." Alistair, tragically, just never truly realized it until his dying breath. That evening, Arthur and Ethan celebrated their burgeoning company's 5th anniversary at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the serene expanse of Sapphire Lake, its waters gleaming under the setting sun. Their groundbreaking fraud detection software was now proudly utilized by over 200 prominent financial institutions, and their thriving enterprise employed an impressive staff of 37 highly skilled professionals. To successful revenge. "Dad," Ethan said, raising his glass, a mischievous glint in his eyes, echoing a past sentiment. "To successful business, my son," Arthur corrected gently, clinking his glass against Ethan's. The revenge, after all, was merely the unyielding foundation upon which we built something far greater. Ethan laughed, a genuine joyful sound. "Fair point, Dad. To building something immeasurably better from the very ashes of something broken, something utterly destroyed." They clinked glasses once more, a shared toast, and watched in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with fiery hues over the tranquil lake where they had scattered Serena's ashes 3 years earlier. "Any lingering regrets, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice soft, contemplative, echoing a question he had posed many times over the years, a litmus test of his father's enduring peace. Arthur thoughtfully considered everything that had transpired since that fateful day, since he had first heard the incriminating conversation captured in his car. The betrayal had been an earthquake, utterly devastating, but it had paradoxically also led to profound discoveries about his own inner strength, the remarkable resilience of his son's character, and his unwavering ability to rebuild not just his life, but an entire empire from the very ruins of destruction. "No regrets, Ethan," Arthur said finally, his gaze fixed on the receding light. "Some storms, as harrowing as they may be, ultimately serve to clear the ground, preparing it for far better, far stronger construction." As they drove home in the lingering twilight, Arthur reflected on the profound completeness of his hard-won victory. Alistair Thorne was dead. Serena Sterling was dead. The sprawling criminal network that had so cruelly targeted his family was utterly destroyed, its remnants either imprisoned or extinguished. His business was not merely thriving, it was revolutionizing an industry. Ethan, his brilliant son, was not only successful but also strong, wise, and profoundly principled. But more importantly, Arthur had learned a truth far more valuable than any financial gain. The most potent revenge was not dramatic or violent, filled with bitter retribution. It was simply, profoundly, living well, building a life of integrity and purpose, while your enemies, consumed by their own darkness, inevitably destroyed themselves from within. The same methodical patience, the same strategic acumen that had forged his formidable software company had also, with chilling precision, systematically dismantled his enemies' lives. Not through hatred or vengeful obsession, but through careful, calculated planning, astute strategic thinking, and the unwavering understanding that true justice, comprehensively served, was infinitely more satisfying, more enduring than fleeting vengeance. Ethan was right. They were now ready for anything. They had survived the worst kind of betrayal imaginable and had emerged not just intact, but demonstrably stronger, unequivocally smarter, and immeasurably more successful than ever before. Arthur parked their car in the familiar driveway and looked at the house he had once shared with Serena, a place once haunted by shadows. It felt profoundly different now, no longer a repository of painful memories, but cleansed and purified by the relentless march of time and the illuminating power of truth. This was home again, truly home, not just a place where betrayal had once festered. "Chess game, Dad?" Ethan asked, ever eager as they stepped inside. "Actually, I think I'll pass tonight, son," Arthur replied, a subtle smile playing on his lips. "I have some rather exciting planning to do. New business ideas, something truly significant brewing." Arthur walked into his office, the quiet hum of his high-powered computer a familiar comfort, and opened his laptop. On the screen, a new email awaited, one from a prestigious venture capital firm, expressing keen interest in acquiring their groundbreaking fraud detection technology for a substantial, truly staggering sum. Arthur smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, and began typing his carefully considered response. The future, he realized, was not just full of possibilities. It was an open, limitless canvas, and he intended to approach each one with the same unwavering, methodical precision that had served him so exceptionally well throughout his extraordinary journey. The quiet founder had, against all odds, become the successful survivor, the architect of his own profound victory. And that, he knew, was the greatest revenge of all.